Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a non-traditional legal program with your host and trusted advisor, Liz Myska, your guide through the web of life's dilemmas.
Welcome to another edition of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Liz Myska, and today I have an old friend from long ago and far away, from like 2004, Frank Kartheiser. Welcome to Connecting the Dots.
Thanks. I'm glad you could remember that far back.
I know. So catch me up. What have you been up to since 2004?
Well, I can't remember that far back, but I remember I used to work. So I had a job. I was the lead organizer of Worcester Interfaith for a number of years. Worcester Interfaith is a coalition of churches, synagogues, mosques, neighborhood groups, working on issues important to those institutions. And I was there for about 25 years. I was fortunate to be able to start it up back in the early 90s, and then was hired as the first lead organizer. So got to do that for a while.
So what was the impetus? What was something going on that you felt that there was a need to bring people of different faiths together?
Well, maybe just for context, so I'm pretty Catholic. I'm pretty much a Catholic. And community organizing is the anti-poverty tool of the Catholic Church. Okay. And so I had been a founder of the Mustard Seed, which is a Catholic worker house of hospitality here in the city. Founded the Mustard Seed in the early 70s. And that's good work, it's the corporal works of mercy, but it's mostly doing for. Right. And so community organizing is about doing with. How do we build community, identify challenges, learn how to break these challenges apart into pieces that we can work on, and then have an impact on our neighborhood, our community, and hopefully our country. So that's a big way of saying, kind of through the Catholic worker, kind of the charity thing, into more the justice side, which is where I'd locate Worcester Interfaith. And even though I'm Catholic, I love the interfaith movement, and people bring so much to the table, And the other thing, you probably know this, for Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslims, everyone has, different priorities, different ways they look at that. And, a lot of differences there. And unfortunately, we often emphasize the differences more than what we share. And we share a whole lot more than what we disagree on. And so Worcester Interfaith is still going. It's an opportunity to identify what our strengths are, what our interests are, and how do we work together, and model that for our congregation.
You said, and I love this, doing it for rather than doing it with. That's a mantra that I've adopted too, because being a VIP, a visually impaired person. By the way, I coined that because I didn't like being called blind. Anyway, that the impetus for society is to help me, and I am appreciative, but I don't want you to do it for me. I want us to do it together. I wanted you to do it with me, and to understand that I do it a different way. I do it a different way now that I'm not sighted than I did when I was sighted, and that doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different, and that's the theme that I hear you saying with people of different faiths. They're worshiping a deity. The name may be different, but they're all cognizant of we are human, and there is something that is elevated above us. And again, to emphasize the humanness of it. And I would imagine the same thing with the mustard seed. So, and I know it's the 50th anniversary of the mustard seed.
Yes.
So, and again, feeding people, feeding and nurturing the soul. And
yeah. Well, I like that you're a VIP. Glad that we have that cleared up. And you know too, from doing 4, which is good, and we need to do that, and we need to help people. We need to share that, but it's not the be all and end all. Celebrating 50 years of the mustard seed is a mixed blessing, right? We're in the richest country in history, and we still have to have soup kitchens. Right. And, don't get me wrong, the people at the Mustard Seed are incredibly generous, the volunteers, the guests. We've been around for 50 years, and we've never had any paid staff. It's all based on religious congregations, businesses, neighborhood groups that provide the food, the meal, share it, and our guests who come and be a part of it. So it's a tremendous effort. I just don't want to celebrate the 100th anniversary.
Right.
And so that's kind of where Worcester Interfaith comes in. How do we get into the area of policy and what changes we need so that we don't have to have soup kitchens?
Did you see how did the idea, the concept of the mustard seed, were you rubbing elbows with people that had fallen on hard times? Was there a prison population that what was the seed for you?
Well, the seed was actually the Vietnam War.
Okay.
So I came out here from Chicago to go to Holy Cross in 1968. And I was playing football and messing around on the top of a hill in Worcester and having a gay old time. And guys my age were dying in Vietnam. I was so out of it in high school. Thank God I got to go to college and learn about what life was about. And that what was really happening, that poor folks, especially black and brown men, were being drafted. Here I am on the top of the hill going to school, going to college. Right. I mean, if you have the money and the wherewithal, this country's pretty good, but if you don't have it, it gets ugly. And when I started to learn what was going on, that if you didn't look like me, you got treated differently. Right. And I didn't know that. And so learning that, was a wake-up call. I'm glad it happened. Too bad it took a war to wake me up. Right. But, I probably felt guilty and, embarrassed. But more than anything, I felt like, wow, I have so much. How do I give it back? Right. I couldn't stay in school anymore when guys are dying. So I dropped out of Holy Cross, just started doing anti-war work with, you might imagine, all the clergy that were part of the anti-war movement. We had, I couldn't name them all, but we had some tremendous Lutheran, Baptist, Catholic, all the denominations who were doing tremendous anti-war work. And so I was working with those congregations and those ministers, and then finding the Catholic worker movement through Dave O'Brien. Dave is an American Catholic historian in town here, taught at Holy Cross. And learning about the Catholic Worker, which was founded down in the Bowery in 1933 during the Depression by Dorothy Day and Peter Morin. And they had founded the soup kitchen there just to care for people. And they built the Catholic Worker as a personalist, pacifist organization. And so here I was just trying to analyze what was going on with the war, what was happening in the leadership of our government, what was going on in our communities. And that idea of pacifism, of nonviolence was very important, became very important. And the personalist part was, how do you put your body out there? How do you put your body on the line, so to speak? For me as a Catholic, we have the sacraments, the 7 sacraments. And those sacraments are where I'd put my body on the line, I'd show up, here I am. And learning about the Catholic Worker got me excited. And so I decided to, start a Catholic worker. Well, I saved up some money to go to
gonna say.
Europe. I saved up some money to go to Europe. Then got this idea that we had a Catholic worker house in Worcester in the 40s on Austin Street. So another friend from Holy Cross, a guy named Sean Donovan, he came back. He had been doing anti-war work. And we started looking around for where we could open up a Catholic worker house. And we opened up on Piedmont and West. I'm sorry, Pleasant Street, Pleasant and West. We opened up a storefront there as a Catholic worker storefront, just to share what we had. It was great.
How did people find you? I mean, how did the...
Well, we were sitting in there. There was a big chess match going on internationally. Oh, I forget the name of the guy. But anyway, so we were sitting in the window at the storefront, and a woman came in and said, "What are you doing here?" We said, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" She said, "Well, put some coffee on." Come on. Because if you come up from Main Street, it's the top of the hill.
Yes.
Pleasant and West. And the Elder Towers are over there. So, okay, all right, we'll put some coffee on. What about food? We got to eat. So bit by bit, people started coming in, and we just, broke it open. Sean was funny because we were sitting there playing chess, and he said, "We should name it the mustard seed." The first thought I had, I don't know if you remember the 70s, but I thought of a hippie boutique. Like, what in the mustard? No, we got to name it after a saint. No, mustard seed. I love it. Well, that's what so he named it, and then people started coming, and then like a year later, we got evicted. And
These were momentous occasions.
Well, must be time to buy a house.
All right.
So we bought 93 Piedmont Street, where we are now. We bought a three-decker there and moved the Catholic worker over there. And a guy named Michael Boover, and Jerry DiNardo, they kind of led the house. It was opened in '74, and they took charge of it then.
And did you maintain ties to it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't untangle
extricate,
mess.
right? You
don't untangle that mess. No,
the tentacles reached out and was like, you're
like Frank, where are you going? You're over here. You're with us. But for me, living there, I was getting ready to get married and things like that. But the house went on, and it's just been a great experience. Like, even within the context that we talked about, to be able to do that kind of work. And Dorothy Day would get this, who started the Catholic Worker with Peter Moore, and Dorothy would get this back during the Vietnam War days. "What are you doing, Dorothy? Why are you doing this charity work? We got to get on to bigger stuff." And she said, "Well, this is important work, and someone has to do it." And we're still in that situation.
How did the Mustard Seed get the organizations to volunteer? Was that part of the Worcester Interfaith, or?
No, Worcester Interfaith, the Mustard Seed started in '72, so this is our 50th, and Worcester Interfaith we started in '93.
Okay.
So, there was a big chunk of time. So there wasn't, much of a connection. But as you know, just from being around, the people in Worcester are so generous. Yeah. I mean, just one by one, individuals, religious congregations, colleges, people just stepped up and still do. People are dropping off clothes. So now we still have a soup kitchen. We have a food pantry. We have a clothing room. All the basics. And people are dropping it off, coming by, helping out. The way it works, not to go too far in the weeds, but an institution will take like the first Thursday of every month, or the second Tuesday, things like that. So you need about 25 institutions that are doing the cooking and helping out. We managed in the 80s to burn the house down.
Oh, good.
but Bishop Harrington, Catholic Charities, they stepped up and built the building that we have now, which is really built more as a soup kitchen. You know, it's 2 floors, but the first floor is a soup kitchen with a great kitchen in it. In the second floor, there's an office and a chapel. And then in the basement, we have the clothing and the food pantry stuff. So it's just a great building for us to be able to be in.
I'm thinking, you know, homelessness is such a, you know, an issue. How did shelters learn about the mustard seed and send? In other words, what's the pipeline to the people that you're helping? Is that word of mouth, or are there? Because again, it seems like, again, that, as you said at the beginning, it seems like this is going to perpetuate because it's there. How do we
Yes.
How do we address the problem
Right.
so that you don't need this anymore?
Right. Well, after we bought this 3-decker, you know, Abby's house started in like 5 years after us. So that would have been in later on in the 70s. But those women really know how to run a shelter and how to take care of people. We did like radical housing. What does that mean? It means someone knocks at the door, they get a place to stay.
Okay.
What do you mean a place to stay? How many beds you got? Well, people just slept where they landed.
Yep.
So it was pretty chaotic.
Okay.
And every now and then we had to rein it in. We actually bought another building for a while and used it as a shelter. And then we realized, you know, not only are we bad at shelters, we're not good landlords, you know, so we got rid of that. So we focused on these areas, but doing the housing part, which is tremendous work, that was hard for us to take on and to be more thoughtful about it. So it's better that other people are doing it. But you probably don't know this, but during the pandemic, our numbers actually went down. So we do a meal every weekday, and we were doing 125 meals a night before the pandemic, which meant all our energy was going into getting the food, you know, preparing it, serving it, cleaning up, and things like that. And the pandemic came, and the numbers actually went down. So now we're doing about 75. They started to go back up a little bit, but we were down to like 70, 75 meals. And I think a lot of it was the government stepping up and caring for people, the state, more shelters being opened, spreading people out. The shelters started to offer meals. So there were some interesting things, because I know the food pantries have ballooned.
Right.
But for us, our numbers have been down, and I'm hope that that's because people are being cared for. You know, you don't always know how it is.
Right.
But because the work was less, it gave us a little more opportunity. So we've started a summer camp now for the kids in the neighborhood. You could probably imagine when you're having 125 people for dinner every night, you're a pretty bad neighbor.
Well, the lines, and and people needing to use the bathroom,
People in the neighborhood are great. I did some door knocking. They said, well, it's a pain, but everybody has to eat.
Right.
You know, that's how Worcester is. Everybody's got to eat. So they put up with us. But now that the numbers are down, and I hope they don't go back up, I hope we can figure this out. We've started a summer camp for some of the kids in the neighborhood, because during the pandemic, they just lost so much, you know, of classroom time and things like that. So we want to have fun, and we also want to improve their MCAS scores and things like that. But it's been this bonus for us that we could do something for our neighbors, you know, as well as our guests.
So what kind of things are you teaching the kids? Just
we're teaching them how to have a whole lot of fun.
I was going to say,
They're learning a lot of fun. But what the students, there's students from Holy Cross and Clark who do the teaching. And they give them an MCAS score, MCAS test at the beginning. This runs the month of July, MCAS test. And then they work on how they can build strengths around what they learned from the test. And then they take it again at the end of July. They'll take another one to see. You know, you've probably heard about this. During the summer, there's the summer slide.
No, I'm not
So
familiar.
students lose anywhere from
okay.
a half to a grade level over the summer. They slide back.
Because they get rusty.
Yeah, right. And so we're trying to deal with the slide, but we also want to advance them so that they're picking up some of the skills and subjects that maybe they didn't get enough attention on because of the pandemic.
So what's the age group of these kids that are?
We're focused on third and fourth graders,
Okay.
rising third and fourth graders.
I know that whole thing about rising. I just think of the boats. No.
Well, you may know this too. Third graders learn to read, and fourth graders read to learn. You got that? Third graders learn to read.
Right.
And then in fourth grade, you read to learn.
Give me an example.
So you're learning.
It's not penetrating here.
In third grade, you're learning how to read.
Right.
They're teaching reading. When you're in fourth grade, now you're reading to learn the different subjects.
Okay.
And so
Thank you.
if your learning to read part didn't go well, then your reading to learn isn't
It's
going
not
to
gonna-
go.
right,
It's not going
right.
to happen. So we're trying to focus on rising third and fourth graders because of that. But, you know, there's this issue of siblings. You can't say, hey, mom and dad, we'll take the third grader, but not the fifth grader. Or
okay.
the first, you know what I mean? So we want to mix it up. We want to, you know, we want to we got to care for families too.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a little bit on the staff, but they're good. They're good.
And how many kids are you?
I think right now we have 10 to 12 or something like that, and we have 5 teachers. But what happens? Our kids are, you know, they come, they have a good time, and then they invite their neighbor or a
yes.
friend or a sibling. So the numbers is always going to change.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
The number's going to change a little bit and stuff like that. And we go on field trips, you know, do a lot of fun stuff. So the numbers is going to change, but the focus on that third and fourth grade learning piece is going to be a priority.
So what kind of field trips do you do?
We're going to go to the art museum.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know what's even open. Is the Ecotarium open?
I believe the Ecotarium is
You know,
open,
things
yes.
like that.
Okay.
No,
I'm
could go to Purgatory Chasm, I guess. We're going to the zoo.
okay.
Yeah.
No, the reason I'm asking is I started working with youthful VIPs, youthful visually impaired kids, and again, these kids, and I'm generalizing, but if they were born blind, they've never been places because it's very much sight oriented.
Right.
But what we've discovered in our activities is we as visually impaired people are better at teaching visually impaired youth and teenagers because we're using we're not using, oh, look here or see this. We're saying, I have this object in my hand, I'm going to hand it to you, feel this. So I'm thinking that we could do like a little collaboration, Frank,
Yes,
here with
yes.
because
Where are those students? Are they in our system? The VIP?
yes and no. They're under the umbrella of the special needs, but it really depends upon it really depends upon what school they're in, because again, there's a stigma that's attached to blindness. So oftentimes the parents do not, like you really can see, I mean, unless they're totally blind, in which case they can't, and so. But I work with Darcy Schwartz, who runs Art Reach, which is an after-school and summer camp program, and teaching fashion and artwork. And we actually will be going to Tower Hill, right? And she wants her students who are sighted to be blindfolded and do an activity.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking
That's
similarly we
great.
could we could do so, because again the kids the kids are curious, and once the blindfolds go on, they're either like, I want to rip this thing off, or like, wow, how do you do this when you can't see it? So anyway, I'm thinking this is a way for me to reconnect with you. But anyway, I digress. Actually, with the whole food thing too, because we've done like dining in the dark, where you have no idea what. You're blindfolded. You have no idea what you're eating, and and it's funny, if people can see it, they're like, oh no, it's chop suey again. But if they can't see it, they're sniffing like, what is that, chicken? Again, they disassociate because they can't see it, and you can disguise a lot of things too with I hate Now I'm thinking back to my husband. I hate ratatouille. My husband supposedly hated eggplant. But with ratatouille, you cook it down, and he was gobbling it up. and then of course I didn't tell him, but a friend said, he's like, oh, it's ratatouille, and they're like, yeah, you know what's in there? And he's like, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. So
you didn't have to blindfold.
I didn't have to blindfold, no, but it was disguised. I guess it was disguised, and so maybe that's how we should wrap up. That a lot of this is not, the work that you've done and the work that you do is not obvious to people until they have an eye-opening experience and it's brought to their attention. And that's when they realize, I'm part of the problem, but I'm also part of the solution.
So
any final words on that theme?
I'd only say that, it's hard on the neighborhood, of being there, because so many people are transient, who come up to the mustard seed. But making these connections hopefully is eye-opening, for neighbors, guests, volunteers, all of us involved, about how do we build this sense of a strong community.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Frank, for being my guest today.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And thank you for the good work
that
that you've done and that you're doing.
Thanks.
That's great.
Tell Frank I said hello.
I will. Join me for another edition of Connecting the Dots.
Please note that the information provided in this show is not a substitute for consulting with an experienced local attorney and receiving counsel based on the facts and circumstances of a particular transaction. To contact Lizbeth, email her at lisbeth@elizabethlmyska.com or call her office at 508-753-7681. We're online at connectingthedots.lawyer. Executive producers, Lizbeth Myska and Jack Peacock. Producers, John Medberry and Bill Hamilton. A production of Elizabeth L. Myska, J.D., LLM, in association with Compliments.
Bye, Janet. It's nice seeing you again. You look good, girl. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Well, to help me, she'd have to help every day. Every hour, every ouch, every time my wife calls for help. I mean, maybe she could help me make her lunch. But the crust, all the crust has to be cut off the corners. She could help me run to the doctor for the 5th time this week. Help me with the specialist and the second opinions and the painful paperwork about paperwork. Help me deal with how hard it is seeing my wife's name on so much paperwork. But this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this, like this, for her. Besides...
Take care.
We will. Janet doesn't like her cooking anyway.
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.
Pull your face mask down. What about the chest guard? It looks loose. Is it loose? Okay, here comes the heat.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you.